Today I'm going to talk about a topic that I'm really excited about, which is 7 things I wish I knew when I was new to sports cards. So the reason I want to touch on this today is I want to dive into some topics that I feel like the mainstream hobby media doesn't really tell you when you first get into sports cards. When I first started, I just remember getting bombarded with, you got to open boxes, you got to buy the new hot rookie, here's what you got to do. I'm not here today to tell you exactly what to do, but I'm going to share some things that, again, I wish I was told when I first started. At the end of the day, if one of these help you in any way, then I know my job was successful here with this video. So if you're new to the channel, my name's Austin. I run a channel here called Carlson Cards on YouTube and Instagram. I actually first got into the hobby right after graduating college in 2020. I recently moved to a new state for a job after school, and I really didn't have anyone in the area that I knew. So I saw an advertisement online for a sports card show. I went, made some friends, the rest is kind of history. This story is recent enough to where I remember what it was like when I first started. And again, I'm not a guy who's been here for 20, 30 years, but I am recent enough to where I remember some of the struggles I had, and I hope to help you with them here today. On the top left is my wife at one of the first card shows we set up at in Shipshewana, Indiana. And then since then, I actually recently moved back to Wisconsin, which is my home state, and started a show here. So that's the photo on the top right. Ultimately, I want to put this video together because I love this hobby and I really don't think there's enough video content to help new people out. A couple photos in the bottom left as well. That's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, near and dear to my heart. Those are the guys that I collect, just so you have some background knowledge coming in. The first thing I wish I knew when I first got into sports cards was that somebody told me to just soak up all the information you can like a sponge. Like I mentioned, there's so many places you can take information from. You could go to a local card show or a card shop. You can find some great channels here on YouTube like Sports Card Collector Investor Dealer, who's a big inspiration for me starting a YouTube channel. Or you can even listen to podcasts on your way home from work. Or something I personally love doing was just going on eBay, searching a player, and just seeing really what's out there for each player. The reason I want to share this tip is because, again, I feel like it's so easy when you first start out to see these videos of people saying, go buy this, go do that, here's how you make money. When in reality, what I think people should be saying is stop for a second and just learn and see what's around you. I'll use the metaphor when you first follow a new sports team or maybe even watch a new sport for the first time. There's hundreds of players and names and legacies you have to learn. It's honestly the same with sports cards. There's all these sets, parallels, players, patches, autographs. I mean, there's just thousands of different avenues you can learn about. And one of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started was I thought that there was only one lane that you could swim in, which for me, right away, that I got sucked into was the hot modern rookies. Because honestly, when you go on YouTube or go to card shows, a lot of times what you see is just the guys from the last couple years. So when I went to my first card show and I saw dealers with vintage or, 90s basketball, I thought, people still collect that stuff? What's the point of that? And this was such a wrong statement. I wish I, again, had just been told to talk to these people, learn from these dealers and collectors that have been here for 20 or 30 years. Because honestly, if I had asked them, hey, when's the last time you saw a bunch of people getting into the sports card hobby? They probably would have told me how it's not going to be glamorous forever like it was at the time in 2020. And honestly, this could have saved me a lot of money and ultimately maybe taught me a new way to collect. And that's, I think, the key here. It's important to learn from collectors and people who set the precedent for what we're jumping into, which is sports card collecting. Because it is a blast, sometimes watching people flip cards and make money here on YouTube and the quick videos that you see sometimes. But if you're in this for the long haul like I knew I wanted to be, that's not necessarily the avenue that's going to keep you here forever. The second thing that I wish someone had told me early on was that don't let anyone tell you how to collect. And again, I started mentioning a little bit, but the reason I say this is because when you first start, it gets overwhelming where you just see kind of the same type of cards over and over again. So that led to me buying some hot rookies for basketball, and lo and behold, a few months later, I realized I didn't even care about the cards I had been buying. I have no attachment to the player, they get hurt. And in reality, I should have just been going for football cards like I am currently. Because that was where my passion was, those fantasy football stars from the 2000s that I remember watching as a kid. So again, like I mentioned a few times, there's so many different avenues to collect, even just in basketball, right? You have vintage from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You have the awesome 90s inserts of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, really rare cards that were impossible to pull from packs. Or again, you can collect the new hot star if you enjoy it, and that's the point here. Collect what you enjoy. Or maybe you're a high roller. Maybe I'm talking to the next multi-million-dollar card collector here. And maybe you want just a card of Michael Jordan, LeBron James that's autographed and has a game-worn jersey put into the card. But again, ultimately, just a big reminder, don't let anyone tell you how to collect. You pick what you want to collect and enjoy it. Because that's what I wish I had heard when I first joined the hobby. The third tip that I want to touch on, I think this ties back to my first point a little bit about learning from collectors, is I've learned it's very, very important to keep a long time horizon when you're collecting and dealing in sports cards. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that all of us have some sort of value attached to the cards. Even if we're going to keep them forever, money is still an important factor in what we're collecting. Like most, right? I'm collecting right now, it's a lot of fun, I envision doing it for the long term, but I know I can't take these cards to my grave, so value does matter if I want to pass this along to maybe my kids or grandkids one day. And the reason I share this tip again is because some of the people that I've seen with the best and just craziest and coolest collections are people that kept a mindset that was extremely long term. Now there's a few things that I mean by this. First and foremost, keeping a long-term mindset means that you're not going to panic if you miss an auction or you don't win a card that you were bidding on. Or in addition, if you bought cards and they went down over the short term here, you might be panicking, right? I've had that happen with cards that I own. But if I'm buying stuff that I like and I want to keep long-term and my mindset is that direction, ultimately, does it matter? No, it really does not. So this point is really for your own sanity, and in addition, kind of steers towards what you're collecting. Because like I mentioned, I'm not going to tell you how to collect, but it is very, very important, and I wish someone told me to think long term when you start collecting. Because like I mentioned a few times here, I jumped into the new rookies, the new football players, the new basketball players, and honestly, I'm going to call this the Kyler Murray effect. Because when I first got in, he was so popular to collect, his prices were crazy, I bought a few cards, and honestly, now here at the end of 2022, I don't hear a lot about him. I don't see his cards too much. Now again, if you're a diehard collector of him, that doesn't really matter to you. But for me, as a person who was just thinking short term, I wanted to buy cards, then sell them and make some money, I really pigeonholed myself because I bought a player that had proven nothing. Unlike some of the other players I could have been buying, like I've shifted towards, which again, for football, for me was Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. And again, you don't have to do it that way, but I'm just giving an example of kind of the evolution that I've went through. Where again, I realized I really wanted to go after the players that were important to me and I had nostalgia for. And truly enjoyed collecting without the semblance of selling in the short term to try to make some money. Because trust me, it's a stressful game. I'm sure you've all experienced it. My fourth tip here is to be cautious of FOMO. Now, if you're not familiar, FOMO is fear of missing out. It's that feeling when you're a kid in high school, there's a party going on and you weren't invited and you're thinking, damn, that girl I like is probably there. I'm definitely missing out. And for you, that hot girl might be Aaron Judge, which as we all know this past season, he hit 62 home runs and broke the record. But I want to use him for a quick example that I'm going to show you guys here. So if, let's say I was a huge baseball fan and I wanted to collect Aaron Judge when I saw that he was going to set history with his home run total last year. I might have panicked when I saw the run up of his prices in the past year. Now, if I had a mindset that was, again, short term and not long term horizon, I might have gotten this fear of missing out and thought, you know, if I don't buy the cards now, they're going to keep going up and I'm never going to get them. I'm sure you've seen the same thing, but from my experience, that typically is not the case. The prices will go up in the short term very quickly, like you see from this chart. And then honestly, it kind of dies down quickly once the hype goes away. Now, even as you see with Aaron Judge, it's still slightly higher than it was before the season, which, I mean, makes sense. The dude set history. But the main point here is if you're trying to collect this player for the long term, don't fear of missing out. Grab the card at the peak when you could have just waited 2 months. That's what I wish someone would have told me. Now, again, if you want to buy it at any point, that's your prerogative. But for me, again, I just wish somebody had told me this when I first started. That if you exercise patience, you will get the card you want, likely at a better price when you wait for the hype to die down. My fifth tip here is, again, another one I wish I learned a little earlier. So your brand matters, and it's a lot more than you think. When I first started going to card shows, right, I had met people, but never really had this thought in my head. Naturally, I try to be a nice guy, so it made sense, right? Have the good interactions with people, get their names, maybe make an Instagram and connect with them on there where you show off your card collection. But what I think I didn't realize is how much those relationships can really compound over time. You meet someone at a show or at a card shop or online, and then they know, right, hundreds of people. You're going to connect now. You're 2 places away from hundreds of people that you haven't met yet. And it's a great way to meet other collectors and ultimately help improve your collection in the long run. Because I swear by the fact that if you focus on the relationships in this hobby, meet people, treat people fairly, don't try to screw people over, you're going to be in a much better spot for people to long term help grow your collection and for you to help others grow their collection as well. And to me, this obviously applies online or in person, especially again, when you start going to the big card shows, which I haven't had the chance to go to the National yet, but I'm really excited this year to meet some of the people I've met online and meet them. And so at these big shows, I think that's where this effect really takes place. Because you're going to need other people out there in the crowd looking for the cards that you're looking for as well, while you're helping them look for cards they really need for their collection. And again, that's why I think brand really matters. And ultimately, I wish I was told a little earlier to really make sure that you're treating people fairly and ultimately representing yourself well in every situation, because it does matter in the long term. The sixth thing I wish someone told me very early on is to just set a budget and stick to it. You know, because when I first started, I knew I wanted to buy some cards, but I didn't have an idea of what they even went for or what kind of stuff I was interested in. So it's very easy to just jump online and just buy a card, buy a card, buy a card, and then you look at the end of the month and you get kind of stressed because you spent all this money. And it really takes you out of a position of power, because you're now working from a place of, crap, I spent all this money, I gotta go sell some other cards, or I gotta go work a little harder, work overtime to pay off this credit card bill. And it's really not a good place to be. Because I had it a few times where honestly, a couple months early on, I spent a little more than I wanted, and I had to grab from my savings that my wife and I had. And genuinely, that's a horrible feeling. I really didn't like that, right? It was a little easier because I convinced her, well, I'm going to treat this like a business and make some money and also grow a collection. But if you can have that discussion earlier and just say, hey, this extra $100 or $50 I have at the end of the month, that's what I'm going to be spending on this. Whether that conversation with yourself or a spouse, I again wish I was told that really early, because it would have made things a lot easier. And this does tie back to the point I made about a long time horizon. So a lot of accounts you're going to see, even if you were to pop on my Instagram, you're going to see a lot of these bigger cards. I'm not flattering myself, I'm just saying a lot of bigger cards. And it's very easy to try to get that mindset of, man, I got to right away jump into that. I got to get these big cards and have this crazy collection because I'm going to feel amazing when I have all these cards. And I'm telling you upfront very, very, very clearly that was not my story. It took a long, long time to grow to this spot that I'm in now. And again, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very lucky to be here, to have this opportunity to collect awesome cards. I really enjoy it. But like I said, it's been 3 years. And I don't think for the first 2 years I bought a card over, let's say, $200. It was a lot of doing what I do now, where I buy cheaper cards. Sometimes I grade them, and then if I get an order back, I'll keep a couple and sell the rest. So what I did was a lot of working within cards to grow my collection. And that's a nice spot to be when you're being responsible. You're using your energy. Maybe you want to go sit up at a card show to go make some money and then turn that into more cards for your collection. Because that's the adventure I've had, and honestly, it's been a blast to put that work in and know that I've earned the collection instead of just going above my means to buy a collection. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again, nobody likes going into debt for sports cards, so please don't do it if you can avoid it. My seventh and final point, and thing that I wish someone had told me early on, is never lose sight of why you are here. So when you're on Instagram or YouTube, it's very easy, and you're going to get recommended videos and people who are pretty negative, I'm going to be honest. And it's very easy to get sucked into that and start to think the same way. I've had it happen myself. Oh, card prices are down. Oh, this person's doing this shady thing, right? You see these videos online. I've learned over time that I really don't benefit at all from watching this type of content, and it kind of makes me feel very negative about the hobby as a whole. So this is where I wish someone had just told me, dude, remember why you're here. You joined this hobby, like I mentioned at the very beginning, because you're looking to meet people in the area because you didn't know anybody. And for some of you, it might be you were a kid, you remember opening packs and you're jumping back into it. Both stories are pretty innocent and honestly a good reason to start a new hobby. To get relationships, go back to old memories, get that nostalgia. And again, that's what matters here, and that's the point I'm trying to make. It's very easy to get stressed out, get in the weeds, get into the finances about all this making money, growing a collection, or again, getting sucked into the hobby negativity. But at the end of the day, I think we all, especially myself, I got to be a little more thankful for why I'm here, and again, what this hobby has given me, which is a bunch of friends, great relationships, and a great way to pass time on the weekend, not gonna lie. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you took something away from this video. And if you aren't already subscribed, please do feel free. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the video.